Good evening. Today is February 9th. S&P 500 made the low shortly after the open today, and in the afternoon it traded again in a narrow 10-point range for most of the days. Futures closed up 1.5 points. Nasdaq made new highs as well as Russell, which again was the leader today, up half of the percentage points and up 7 days in a row now. Oil was up 0.7%, but of course, the winner was Bitcoin again, up over 7% after trading as high as 48,000. And Bitcoin has recorded one of the largest weekly inflows ever in the last few days. Its market cap now surpassed Tesla. It makes it the ninth largest asset globally. And MicroStrategy, with ticker MSTR, was in the news today. It owns over 1 billion of Bitcoin in USD dollars, of course, as we always measure Bitcoin. And I guess it got people excited today because MSTR was up over 22% after being up of around 30% yesterday. So it looks like holding Bitcoin now adds more value than the Bitcoin's value itself. Strange world. On the health front, Johnson & Johnson CEO was saying that people may need annual COVID vaccine shots for the next several years. And I'm not sure why people are surprised and why is it even news. The virus is here to stay, as the vast majority of viruses that have ever appeared on this planet. I think we have only eradicated one, smallpox. We're still battling polio. And just like the flu, coronavirus mutates, and the vaccines need to be adjusted, as we have seen with the South African strain. So unless we accept, unfortunately, a certain number of deaths from COVID, as we have with the flu, obviously, we won't be able to return to life as normal. And we will continue seeing weird stuff like fake cutout people in our stadiums, and we'll continue have to wear double masks forever. Speaking of which, Tampa mayor is now trying to prosecute people for not wearing masks while celebrating the Super Bowl victory. I wish she put as much effort, or at least half as much effort, into prosecuting people for riots and looting when they were happening in Tampa. Anyway, Victor, what do you make of the markets today? I think you have tweeted early this morning that you have closed your short, that you have opened late yesterday. It was a nice trade.
We have a Sogi level coming up in Bitcoin.
Right, 50,000 is close.
Um, yeah, that seems like the 3,900 refused to be violated today. It went back and forth about 7 times. Today was a very unusual day in that we actually didn't set a new 20-day high. In fact, using the 16:15 Eastern Standard closing, the market was actually down
Right.
0.25. As of the close, it's back at a new 20-day high. 35% of all the days in 2020 have been a new high. This is a pause that refreshes. There used to be a lot of people who would hold a short position in a stock that in a market that was going way up, and they would say, okay, I'll hold it until it gives me a down day, and then I'll get out. So here was a down day, down 0.25 for 5 minutes. So it's a bull market. Don't don't fight it. Everything's very woke, which is very bullish. There's an effort to humiliate all the Reds. It will be futile. I saw that one of the greatest tennis players, Gail Monteith, said, look, I lost, but don't don't beat me when I'm down. You know, I've tried very hard. I've done the best I can. I just can't put it all together. He's won 10 regular tournaments, but never a major. I think that's how most people feel about someone who's lost. They don't like to beat them into smithereens. Every athletic competitor knows not to rub it in. I noticed that Warren Buffett is back in the news. I have some thoughts about the wisdom that Sage of Omaha, supposedly the greatest investor of all time. First of all, the one thing he has right is actually he has two things correct. One is to really manage the taxes. He started out with 150 million tax loss when he bought Berkshire and a woebegone textile company in Massachusetts. He used that to buy companies in those days. The profits from acquisitions didn't have to be, could be offset by the losses. That gave him a good start. And of course, anyone who's lived a long time, I believe he's 87 now, and he's taking advantage of compound interest. You make 10% a year in stocks over 50 or 60 years, will come probably same to the same amount as Berkshire has made. Last year, Berkshire was underperforming, was up 7 or 8%, whereas the market was up 22%. And the mantra that he follows is everything that he says is very wrong, except for living long and never paying a full tax rate and taking advantage of compound interest. He says he never buys a company that he doesn't understand,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't understand anything except how a typewriter works. He admits that he can't make a lawnmower work. So he's been out of technology for for his whole life now. The only good thing is that he's formed a partnership with Bill Gates, and Bill must advise him from time to time. They play bridge together all the time. But he started out by buying companies, value companies. Now, the value companies have performed maybe 1/5 as well as the growth companies, the low PE companies have performed maybe a fifth as well as NASDAQ during the past 20 years. He's been espousing the purchase of value companies because he doesn't understand technology. But you have to admire, I mean, as I said about Wilt Chamberlain, when someone is a freak of nature and he's so popular, then the powers that be refuse to try to stamp him down. And he's been very vehement in saying that everyone should pay a higher tax rate.
Right,
The
except for
same
him.
as the secretary pays a higher tax rate than him. But everything he does is designed to reduce the tax rate. The FASB earnings, he pays about a 10 or 12% tax rate on all the earnings of his companies. Now he buys companies that were paying dividends, then they don't pay a dividend, so he saves taxes there. He's he's vehement that everybody should pay a higher tax rate, so the service won't dare to audit him unduly, because his idea of looking for cigarette butts, that would have that would have led him into tremendous inferior performance. But fortunately, Charlie Munger, his partner, told him, look, why are you buying all these regional department stores that are selling at 50% of book value and that won't earning anything for the next 30 years? So eventually he got out of the cigarette butts that were very small. That was his technique. Of course, most of his profits have come from buying Geico. He bought that about 40 years ago, and I think up to 10 years ago, almost all of the profits came, all of his superior performance came from Geico. I'm sure they have a million ways of using the code to reduce their rate. Anyway, if you pay, and most of the great investors do this, as my old friend pays nothing because he's situated in the Netherlands, Antilles. Another thing that he's very smart. He's very woke. You know, I doubt that he's voted for a Republican in the last 20 years, and he makes a big point of the fact that he's supporting the progressive agenda. Again, that keeps him away from the firing power. So he's lived a long time. He's applied the compounding interest. His performance over the last 10 years, I'm sure it's not as good as a buy and hold strategy. Nothing to learn by following him. You got to stick away from the value stocks. Graham and Ben Graham was his mentor, and Ben Graham was degenerate. Had used to spend 6 months of the year chasing tail in California. His son knows something about agricultural equipment. In fact, he became the president of a company that I sold in the irrigation equipment field. He seems to be associated with some intelligent investors. One of them paid $1 million twice to buy a lunch with him. Incredible expression of hubris. He said, "Is there anyone who wishes to come to the annual meeting and will give any good reason for not buying Berkshire stock? And you can be sure that I volunteered, but they didn't choose me." He plays racquetball.
Does he?
Yeah, he's fair racquetball player, sort of all smoke there and very, very bad advice for the modern generation. Good thing to do is, aside from living a long time like him, to do the opposite of what he says.
Right. He plays this kind of folksy, innocent, like guy, while he's incredibly duplicitous. And
Yes.
like you
How do
said,
you know about his duplicity?
just the stuff I read online, some of what you have said, for example, that he buys companies which pay dividends, then right away cancels the dividends, reinvests that into other companies that pay more dividends. And so he basically games the tax code and he stays woke, like you said, so he can avoid any IRS investigations. And he keeps saying every year, every time the Democrats win, that his secretary pays more taxes than he is. It's like this old song that just never ends. Yet nothing ever changes. Somehow this continues. If he
Well,
has so much money, if he really wanted the change, he could have influenced the Congress to do it. Yet he just
one
likes talking.
he applies the same frugality to his living. Um, for the for 25 years, she was a cocktail waitress in Omaha, and he kept her as the cocktail waitress. I presume that he's allowed her to retire now. His friendship with all the techs, I think, is very, very good because the techs are very much against the Reds. We're in a very strange time in the world because everything that we're doing in unity is causing disunity, and we're beating a dead man. We're beating a man who's thoroughly humiliated, and eventually, eventually, it will. There'll come a time when old turkey's advice to stay with the bull market. I still think that a signal for that will be when the Nikkei crosses 30,000. It's now 29,500. I've been amazed that with all this spending and the increase every every day, someone pretends that they're handing out emoluments by increasing the stimulus bill to children, to families, to increasing the amounts that they're paying. But with all that, the bonds have managed to go up in the last few days, as we said, as the numbers say. Eventually, if the bonds start when the Nikkei crosses, shall we call it the Sogi level of 30,000, and the bonds go down a few more points, then I think we'll know that. Meanwhile, the European markets are very much inferior. They're doing a lot worse than the U.S. market. That's very bearish. There are a lot of, aside from the fact that we're in a bull market, as Old Turkey says, and that we have to follow it, and that we're at the Soji level of 47,000 in Bitcoin. It was a great day for the market because all the techs were up.
Well, speaking
And
of the techs, have you noticed that some of the large companies have been underperforming. Like Amazon, for example, hasn't made a new high, I think, since September. It's been meandering about 3,000 for months. Apple didn't make new highs in the last 2 weeks. And even though Amazon had great earnings, it's not moving higher. Tesla hasn't made new highs, I think, in about 2 weeks as well. Is that any concern that the leaders are kind of not performing last couple of weeks?
You can always find something that's not perfect. What
Right.
was perfect today is that GameStop was back to the $50 level, and NASDAQ was at a new high. The infrastructure carried the day. They put all the new investors in their place, and there are 7.5 or 8 million new investors. They have a lot of money to lose to the infrastructure. They're still looking for the next stock to provide a short squeeze. Very bad strategy.
Well, just to add a little tidbit about Warren Buffett that one of the people emailed on the spec list is that there were rumors that Buffett was selling S&P puts a few years out, and he didn't even need to put any cash as collateral for them because he's so large. And then I remember that there were similar rumors in 2008 when the market crashed that his puts were pretty much were very close to be called and to be executed, and he had to put up a lot of cash to pay for them. And that's when he actually himself, I think, met with whoever was the treasury at the time and the Fed chief. And that's when they came up with the bailout package, and the market rebounded. And so his puts were saved by the government, which of course contributed to his outperformance.
In England, they call someone like Winston Churchill a good old boy,
Yeah.
and Warren Buffett is a good old boy. He comes in through all the correct entrances. He says he reads 5 hours a day, but I've never seen him reference any literature. But he's a good old boy of America.
He
They
probably reads his accounting statements for 5 hours a day, not the actual literature.
um, yeah, the song that Gilbert and Sullivan played, and we should play it now, is for he's a jolly good fellow, and that's part of
Exactly. And I think there's a kind of uh, parallel, you could say, between him and Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the version two of Warren Buffett, new and improved. And they both have like a personality cult. And I think Elon Musk probably has learned a lot from Warren Buffett, how to be on the right side of politics, to be on the right side of progressivism. And then you get help from the government, like Elon Musk with his credits, energy credits that he sells. That's another thing.
well, we have to we have to put Elon Musk in the category of Will Chamberlain. He's such a genius, and he started so many companies, and so many have failed trying to do the same thing as him. He's very talented, and he's not charlatan like the previous person we've spoken about. All right, let's. What's going to happen tomorrow? Do you know?
I would say a little sell off, which is obviously an easy trade to call due, but who knows? What would you say?
I don't know. When it's down 0.25, but up from, I think people should pay a lot more attention to the open to close move, which was up about 6:15 today. It opened at
Hmm.
38. Opened at 38. 99, and then closed at 39.10. So it was up. A lot of times the open to the actual move tends to gravitate to close to the open. And when you don't have a close to close move, that who knows what is it, up or down? Would you really say that this isn't yet another 20-day high? I wouldn't. It's, the humiliating thing for the people who are short is, they're waiting for the down day. And what's the down day? They get 1/100% down, and it keeps going up. So I don't know. Also, it's wrong. It's wrong to be taking a short-term view on this, because it's a bull market. Everybody should be long until they get a consilience in the Nikkei, bonds start going down, get out of that 167 handle. Crude, it's up about 12 days in a row. It's at a high. That's a good thing to follow.
Right. And it seems like the exuberance is getting more exuberant in the markets. Like I was saying, with certain stocks, the MicroStrategy that bought Bitcoin is moving 30-20% a day. And also the micro caps. It looks like the Wall Street Bets crowd now has moved into the pharmaceutical micro caps, where people are buying stocks that are a fraction of a penny, hoping for them to get to a penny. And those stocks are also moving 20-30% a day, 100% of a week.
Well,
So
the infrastructure loves that, because there's a tremendous bid-ask spread. All the new investors who are trying to get in for ephemeral reasons will eventually pay their contributions to the top feeders.